What is going on, everybody? I'm Adam Johnson, and this is Cover Band Confidential. The conversation you're about to hear is an excerpt from the Cover Band Confidential podcast where we talk about rehearsals. We had one of our fans reach out and ask us what we thought about rehearsal schedules, and in the process, we talked about a lot of things and covered a lot of ground. So if your band is just starting to get back out there, I think this is a great conversation to have, and hopefully you learn some tips and tricks to make your rehearsals more productive. Just wanted to take an opportunity to thank everybody for tuning in. If you are enjoying our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We post new videos here every Friday. Also, if you'd like to support us, you can join our freshly revamped Patreon with a bunch of new tiers, including exclusive content. We also have some cool new designs in the merch store. All of those are currently on sale. Link for that is going to be in the show notes. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Switching gears, we're going to do some listener stuff. The main one being one around practicing. This is from our buddy Russ. Hello, Adam and Dan. I recently emailed you guys asking about pay-to-play gigs, and you gave me some great info. Now I'd like to ask you about cover bands having regular weekly rehearsals. My band, Level Up, rehearses every Monday, regardless of whether we have a gig or not. They rent hourly, which is kind of an issue, $23 to $25 an hour. Reserving 3 hours per week, you're looking at $75 just to rehearse. So you can see how this can get pretty costly, absolutely. Lately, it seems practices have become unproductive. His question is, do you think it is necessary for cover bands to have regular weekly rehearsals? I personally think that if everybody does their homework, quotation fingers, then we should only have to rehearse transitions from song to songs, maybe work out vocal harmonies. To give you a little background, we're relatively new, got started about 9 months ago, didn't fully settle into the current lineup until a couple of months after that. There's two questions here. So as a cover band, if you're established, how often should you rehearse? Also, if you are a cover band that is just getting started, how often should you rehearse?
All right, so Russ pointed out one thing I was going to leap in on, but he went ahead and did it for me. When you were describing this question, you used the word practice.
Yes.
And I want to draw a real strong distinction between practice and rehearsal, right? Practice is a thing you do at home. You do that in the privacy of your home where you learn your part and you figure it out. You got to practice in order to be ready for rehearsal. Rehearsal is a thing that takes place in a group. And so Russ's language in this question was dead on all the way through. He was talking about rehearsal the whole way through. So the question is about rehearsal, but I just want to step over, like, if people are using rehearsal to practice,
that's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah.
We don't like that.
We got to deal with that. We got to deal with it. And that's one way rehearsal can become unproductive. So people are learning their parts on their feet in the rehearsal room. That's not great.
So when I got this question, I immediately went into the Patreon Slack channel. Mike Schulte of the Pork Tornadoes, they've been around for a really long time. So we rehearse maybe 2 to 3 times a year, but they have a certain regimen around sound check and stuff because they play very regularly. So for him, they say that they start their sound check with the same song every time, and they end their sound check with the same song every time. And anything in between is going to be 2 to 3 tunes that they're kind of working on. That's how they onboard new material. Because they're playing so regularly, that is what they've done. Now, the difference between a band like the Pork Tornadoes and Level Up is that the Pork Tornadoes have been around for, 10 plus years at this point. And so all of the kind of dynamics between members and how the stage show works, most of those things have already been established. They've done that work. So for them, it is just kind of like an onboarding process.
Yeah.
So what I had said is that you should rehearse as much as you can manage. There being a financial component kind of plays into that to a certain degree. But I also am of the same mind that you will learn more as a band just getting started about what your band is about by playing on stage in a show environment than you will in a rehearsal.
For sure. In terms of tightening a band, a gig is worth 3 to 5 rehearsals.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, and there is some baseline of good enough you got to get to.
Yeah.
Don't skip the first 5 to 10 rehearsals. But the sooner you can get on stage and the more frequently you can get on stage, the tighter you'll get faster. Now, all of that said, the thing a new band is doing in the rehearsal room, it looks like you're learning material together.
Yeah.
Right? It looks like you're honing those vocal harmonies. It's not really what's happening. What's happening is you're learning each other. And I would say the most crucial people learning each other are the rhythm section, the drum and bass, because the the more time they spend just making noise together, just making sound together, the tighter their groove is going to mesh, the more in sync and in the pocket they're going to be together. And that is what is band tightness. Whatever we guitarists and we vocalists do, I mean, Adam and I are both guitarists and vocalists, but we're sort of over top of the engine room of the band, which is the
foundation.
Bass. Without, if the bass and drum isn't in sync, those two players aren't in each other's brains and in each other's pockets. That's really what makes a band tight. And that can happen in the practice room, and that is a function of hours spent in the practice room. But again, once you're to a place where you're not going to cringe to put it on stage too badly, a little cringe is okay, actually, but not too badly. You learn a lot better in a gig environment than you do in a practice room environment. Is it still worth practicing every week? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think until you are generating shows under your own steam, I think you still need to spend I would call it discovery. You're kind of feeling the dynamics out. The term that kind of came to my mind as you were talking about is like, it's basically a study in electrical engineering because you're trying to determine where the energy lies and how to harness it.
I like that.
And that happens with different parts of the group and different segments of the show.
Yeah.
For members only, I feel like most of like quote unquote choreography or like stage moves and stuff, those all happen organically in the moment.
Yeah.
And then just we kind of took note of them to recreate in the future. Very few things I feel have developed in the rehearsal room other than just the general competency around the material. And maybe in the guitar solo, you go down the octave in this one section, or the harmony stack is, these 3 notes. You're there to do the fine tuning. The performance stuff and the stuff that I think matters to the audience is still probably going to happen in front of an audience.
Largely. Yeah. And the thing I'm talking about that happens in a rhythm section, the gelling of a rhythm section, isn't at all what you just said, right? The details of how a song works or how the harmonies work. There's something very personal and nonverbal, and I can't quite describe it. Not having ever been a drummer or a bassist, maybe they have language for it, but
yes. Well, let me go ahead and throw my 2 cents in. So
yeah.
The main thing about rhythm sections, and when you're talking about tightness, it's basically the bass player understanding where the kick is dropping and making sure that they are in line with when the kick is being hit. In my particular case, like I just did that bass gig for the church thing, and it was a matter of listening to what the drummer is playing and making sure that if he's doing stabs on like the 2 and the 4, that when I'm playing whatever chord changes I'm playing, I'm doing it in conjunction with what he is doing.
Yeah.
So there is a awareness that those players have with one another.
Yes.
And it is little details like that, but it is a lot of the bass and the kick drum like lining up.
Most of the players I've played with, I'm not sure that language is where they find that relationship. I think it's about learning each other. And those of you not watching this, but instead listening, I'm putting air quotes around learning each other. There is something very intangible that happens that's magic between a bassist and a drummer that makes them into a unit that's really, really powerful. And that is a thing that can happen. I say it happens 5 to 7 times more fast. More fast. It's not quite English, but more fast.
More faster
on the stage than it does in a practice room. But it's still a matter of time to playing together to get that.
It also depends on a lot of factors. If you're a band that plays to a click, there's a lot less intuition involved. It's it's much more mechanical.
Yes.
So if you are in a group that doesn't play to a click and it is very much like, everybody's kind of following one another, then you do need to have a bit more of a situational awareness around these kinds of things.
Yeah. And find that place of synergy versus the clicks giving me the place of synergy. Let's just play to it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is the cost of the practice space. And so my solution is I have rented a storage unit, interior climate controlled storage unit, and it runs $190 a month. So, I'm well out ahead of the price that you're getting charged by the hour for that. I can store PA and other gear there. And if you can work out a spot like that, I really, really recommend it. There are a lot of storage unit kind of places around that are looking for bands. Part of the reason is turnover of renters in the storage unit business is like the cost comes from people churning, coming in, leaving, all of that. And bands tend to stick around, tend to have
They also, if they don't, they tend to grab their gear and leave the space vacated. They don't tend to leave their crap and just disappear.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to find a band storage unit on Storage Wars.
Nope.
It's not going to be a thing. A band is a good customer for a storage company. And so I would recommend you look around in your space for a place you can, like a DIY kind of space like that you can get. When we first moved into ours, obviously playing in it, it sounded like a Coke can. And I hung up a bunch of acoustic blankets on the walls, and that helped a lot, warmed the space up very nicely. And it's been our home now for 3 years, and I'm very happy. I wouldn't do anything other than that. I think it's totally the way to go. So if that can solve your pricing constraint and get you into where you can just do a weekly rehearsal to get the band ready to get on stage, I think that's the way forward. That's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, I think that's right. The space is really crucial. So Dan's idea is fantastic, but on the same note, there's other options, in our world, because we do silent rehearsals. I was doing it in a basement, but theoretically I could do it in any room, in any house, anywhere, provided I had the digital mixer and the headphones.
So say just a little bit more about silent rehearsals.
So the band, as far as guitars and bass, has always been direct. Before we started the renovation of the basement, I had an Alesis Nitro kit down there. Spent like $175 on it on Craigslist. And with that and our digital mixer, we could do rehearsals with the kids upstairs without making a whole bunch of racket. And it sounds great to us, and it's all very self-contained and all of that. So if you can find a way to, one, have a digital mixer, two, have direct amplifiers, and three, have digital drums,
and in-ears or headphones. So the point is,
in-ears and headphones.
You're all playing to headphones or in-ears, and so there's no noise happening out speakers.
Yep.
And so it's very bedtime compliant for children.
And it's not as expensive as you would think. In order to set this up, besides my guitar rig, which I already had, I probably spent, let's say, less than $300 on the Behringer XR16 and the Alesis drum kit. Yeah. So it's not as cost prohibitive as one might think, and it was definitely worth the investment.
Yep. So the question, how often should you rehearse, prompted just a whole range of sort of answer-ish stuff.
Yeah, the general consensus is as often as you can. If you can do it once a week, that's great. If you can't, that's also fine. As much as you can handle until you get established, and once you're established, you do it kind of less frequently.
If you get in our case, if you get to a point where you're gigging couple 3 times a month, that's your rehearsal. You don't need
really
to
not necessary. Yeah,
you may want to get together to onboard new material.
Sure.
Right, but that's different from like rehearsing. That's a different kind of work.
Yeah, and I mean, if you are playing regularly, there's no reason why you couldn't literally add a new song every single show.
Sure.
Based on the workflow of showing up, working through a song that you've already practiced, because we've already talked about that, going through it at sound check, and then playing it the night of that show, and then once it's in, it's in. In conclusion, there is no right answer. It's really just as much as you can manage, given the resources that you've got, and the more that you do it, the quicker you'll get to where you want to go.
There you go.